Hi, in this video I'm going to explain how the auto tagger was designed and how to deploy it. I already recorded the first video explaining how it works, so it's available on my blog, silverit.com. So feel free to watch it before keeping going with this video here. So if you're only interested by the deployment part, then I will actually start this video by the deployment part so that it's easier for you. And if you're not interested really in bits and bytes and knowing how exactly it was built, then just feel free to stop watching the video after the deployment part is explained. But if you're interested in how it was done, then it's more targeting developers. So because it will be, I will show the code and explain a little bit how it was done. So maybe just a few words about me. I'm Stefan Eeskens, SharePoint MVP since 2008. My blog is silverit.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Stefan Eeskens. Okay, so before diving in the code and deployment, I will just explain the high level architecture of the solution. So you've got SharePoint, so it's SharePoint Online here. It's an add-in, SharePoint add-in, so previously known as SharePoint Apps, but it's of course the same. So it's a provider-hosted app. So the host web is of course the website in SharePoint in which you will install the app. I'm using an app web to store the configuration of this, let's say, application, and I'm reusing the SharePoint taxonomies. So of course, the tagger takes its terms from SharePoint taxonomies. So the app web then is to store the app configuration. The host web is actually where the SharePoint document libraries are. So you have to install it, let's say, for every website in which you want to, let's say, enable the auto tagging feature. And then you've got, of course, the terms and auto tagging configuration in taxonomy. So I'm not going to re-explain how it works, how to configure the tagger, because I did it in the previous video. So just go to that video to know more. And I've got then my, let's say, application itself. It's using a remote web. So this is the UI where you can enable, disable tagging for lists and libraries or for fields also. And you've got, of course, the remote event receivers, which are used to really process the auto tagging. So from the remote event receivers, I'm getting taxonomy information via CSUM. And then, of course, I'm also extracting document content, so for Word and PDF documents. And I try to match, let's say, taxonomies, information, and document content. So this is really how it works. So this is a quite typical, let's say, architecture for a cloud hosted app. So in the remote event receivers, I'm actually targeting item added. So this is really when documents are created or uploaded. So this is the tagging itself only occurs at that moment. So I'm not using item updated because I couldn't know if the item was updated because, for instance, you remove a tag that was automatically associated by the tagger, and then of course if I come on item updated I add this tag again, that will be a problem. So this is only working with item added, but I am using synchronous and asynchronous events, so you can decide actually which one you want to work with or on which mode you want to work. This is how it works. I've got on field deleted, an event on field deleted. The idea here is more to adjust my configuration when the field is deleted. So for instance, if you enable tagging on a given field, I'm storing that information in the app web, but if the field gets deleted, then I'm just deleting that from the app web too, so that the, let's say, the configuration is in sync with the reality of your list and fields. So, and I just said that both can be synchronous or asynchronous. So this for this let's say architecture, I only work with taxonomies of a few hundred terms. Okay, so in the first video I recorded, my taxonomy was about 500 terms, It behaves quite well, seems to be, let's say, still quite fast for such taxonomies. But say if you have to handle taxonomies with thousands and thousands of terms, it might be a problem, for instance, for response size or that kind of thing. So I didn't try that Tiger in such configuration with such architecture. And in that case, I would assume that some scaling measures should be taken. And how to scale, my way of scaling would be to use regular event receivers or still remote event receivers, but just to queue the messages. Okay, so you would also use Azure queues or service bus, what you want, to let's say queue some messages and then have some background process like worker roles, for instance, or web jobs do the job. So just get information from the queue and process document according to let's say extract tags from documents and from taxonomies. I think that would be the best way to scale. So here, with the current architecture, we're just using remote event receivers. So normally it should be okay. Of course, you could scale if you have multiple instances of your website. So if you remember the architecture picture or schema, you have the remote web that needs to be deployed somewhere. And since I'm using ASP.NET, the best place to deploy it would be probably in Azure. At least this is how I built it. But then in Azure, if you have a website, you can have multiple instances of the same website running. So that could also be a way to scale without changing anything in the code or in the solution. So yeah, so use Azure Queue, as I said, and use workables or web jobs. So this is really what I said. Okay, so let's talk about deployment now. So before being able to deploy the solution, you need to download it first. So you can download it on GitHub. This is the address. Once done, you can just go to your Visual Studio project. You've got two projects as typical, let's say, configuration for a SharePoint app. So you've got the SharePoint project with the app web, so some list that I'm using. And then you've got the remote web project, so the ASP.NET MVC project, which will need to be deployed to Azure. So to deploy it to Azure, it's quite easy. You just need to publish it. So this is nothing new, let's say, or nothing specific to this tool. But anyway, so what you have to do is just creating a website in Azure. Here I already published it, so it's associating automatically to my online website. But otherwise, it's a matter of few clicks and it's okay. So you can either create the Azure website before publishing or using Visual Studio to create the website on the fly. So once it's published, what you need, or before publishing it, sorry, you need to let's say fill in the web.config file correctly. So we've got the SharePoint client ID and SharePoint client secret that you need to populate. So that corresponds to your SharePoint app. So to get that, you can just go to your SharePoint site and then call this page app rec new. Click on generate and client ID, generate a client secret, give it the title, then give the app domain of your Azure website and the redirect URI, which is basically you don't even need to put default depending on whether you have an ASP.NET MVC or web form. Here it's an ASP.NET MVC, so just getting sorry, it's not copied, but anyway, just getting this part is or specifying this part is enough. So replace it, of course, with your Azure website. And so when you come back here, so once you have your secret and ID, you just replace those values here. For logging, I created two keys. So I'm logging the information into an Azure queue. So it's optional. So if you don't want anything here, just leave it empty. Okay, so just leave it blank. Otherwise, specify your storage connection string and give a queue name. It will create the queue if it doesn't exist already. For the receiver URL, so this is the website or where the web service is hosted, so where SharePoint should call whenever it triggers a remote event receiver. So This part will remain the same. You just have to replace that with your website. Okay. For deployment, that's it for the remote web. For the SharePoint app, once it's published, so let's say I publish it, you package the app, then you have of course your client ID, and then once it's done, you have it as a app file. You can just drag and drop that into the SharePoint app catalog, and then you will be able to add this app to your website. If you want to deploy it only against the development site, it's not an issue. You can just publish it directly from here to the SharePoint site, providing it's development or based on the development template, or providing you have the development features enabled. Okay, so for deployment, that's it. So let's now see from a code point of view how that works. As I told you, the first project is really the SharePoint project. I've got two lists where I store some configuration information. So like for instance, where which field is enabled for which list. That allows me to, let's say, get a quicker ID whenever an event receiver is triggered. I just see for that list which fields I need to handle. So say you have 5 taxonomy fields, and if I have to handle 3 of them, then I get this information from this configuration list. So that's the only purpose of the app web in this case, so speed up a little bit things to avoid going back and forth to the host web all the times, and let's say try to get a dynamic, let's say the dynamic configuration of the host web. So I prefer to keep things in sync within the app web. So then you've got, it's just a typical SharePoint, or sorry, ASP.NET MVC app. So I've got a controller. In my controller, I've got a few actions. So basically, I've got the index, or the default one. I've got a get model, which is not an action, but more a helper function. And I've got setSync, which is the action to specify whether you want to have asynchronous mode or synchronous mode for your event receivers, as explained in the demo video. I've got enable auto tagging, which is basically when you want to enable really tagging for a given field. And I've got disable auto tagging, which is to do the other way around, so just disable tagging for a given field. So maybe the thing I could add here, I will not go through all the code, but what is important is that, as I explained in my first video, there is only one event receiver per list. So it means that if you have 3 lists and you want to enable tagging for the 3 fields that are in a list, and you want to enable tagging for all 3, only one event receiver will be created. So this is something I try to, or I manage here. So there is only one field. Once the field has been marked, let's say, as enabled, I check that, and if there is only one, then I associate the event receiver. Same when I delete or disable tagging, I want to make sure that I'm not removing the event receivers until the last field has been disabled. And so again, if there are 3 fields, if you disable one of them, I must keep my event receivers for the 2 remaining fields. So this is the subtlety here, but that's it, so not really hard to understand. In the service itself, what's important to see, so if I switch to the service, so meaning the remote event receiver part, let's go here. You will see that I've got then of course some events I'm handling, so item added, app installed, and app uninstalling. So in the app installed piece, I don't do much. I just log the fact that the application was installed. So if you want to track a little bit where the app is installed, you can do more. Of course, you've got the source code, so feel free to change it. In the app uninstalling, I actually disable or remove all the remaining event receivers. So before uninstalling the app, you could either go into the app itself and decide to, let's say, disable manually all the enabled fields. So if I just launch the app, sorry, I had removed it. Okay, it doesn't matter. But if you watch my previous video, if you launch the, or you can enable or disable tagging, so you could manually disable all the tagging for all the fields. But if you don't do it anyway in the app installing event, it's doing it for you. So the thing is, in this case, I can't use the app web anymore because I don't know if you know, but when an app gets removed from SharePoint, when the code is called, or once your code is triggered, let's say, the app web is already destroyed. So there is no way to reach the app web anymore, and my configuration is in the app web. So what I need to do in this case is to connect back to the host web, see all my lists or that have the event receivers I have created, and then I just remove all these event receivers, and I call the can't execute query once. So if it fails, then I just rethrow the exception to make sure the app is not, I log it of course, and to make sure that the app is not removed, and can you retry, providing you're able to fix the, shouldn't fail, but we never know, so it could have a connectivity issue, whatever. So this is basically how it works for the item added. So this is really more the plumbing. For the item added event, I am so whenever you add a document, I just go and scan the content of the document. To do that, I'm using some packages. So I'm using a PDF library, and I'm using a Word or Office library to extract content from Word documents and or PDF files. And basically, what's important to see here is that in some cases, I noticed, although we are in item added, I noticed that the document was not let's say complete yet. So like the binary files was at 0k, for instance, although it's a bigger file. So if I face this problem, I noticed only a few times, or really on several hundred attempts. But if you have it, then I sleep until also hopefully after 20 seconds the document should really be completely uploaded. So that's really weird, because it should not react like that. Normally when item added is called, it should be ready by calling this code here. But okay, as I observed it, I'm just, let's say, handling that with a sleep of 20 seconds. And I can do that a few times. Okay, so and then if it's still empty after a few attempts, then I just stop. So basically, when the data is not null, so meaning that the binary content is retrieved, then I call some, let's say, some helper functions. So either for PDF files, either for Word documents, so using the libraries I've just mentioned, and I get a text, okay, out of these files. And basically, when I have the content, I just called a helper method from the auto tagging helper that will, let's say, see if there is a match between the taxonomy and the content. So if I go here, you will see that basically what I do is I point, let's say, or I target the fields, okay, taxonomy fields. I try to identify which term set is associated to the field, or which term is associated to the field. And so if it's a term set, you've got a term set ID, you always have one. And if it's a subterm, then you will have the anchor ID that won't be a null grid. So this is how you distinguish, let's say, a term bound to a term set, or a term bound to a subterm, so a term within a term set. So if it's a term set, it behaves a little bit differently. So here I'm more in the function that will set the values, but I should switch to the function that really makes the check on the taxonomy. Let me try to find it, taxonomy session. So it's here. So this in this class, I'm really going back to SharePoint to load the taxonomies associated to the taxonomy fields. So if it's let's say bound to a term set and not to a subterm in the term set, I make a query with a property match information. So remember, I explained how to configure it. So I want to make sure that the auto taggable property is selected or specified for the terms I want to retrieve. Otherwise, I just don't retrieve them. So that will spare some bandwidth and will just be more, or will just be faster, more performant. And then I just call this method of the term set object to get all the terms with that property. Okay, then I load the term collection and I execute the query after, so a bit later. If it's actually not a root term, so if it's not bound to a term set ID but rather to a subterm, In that case, I load things a little bit differently because the problem with that, so when it's not bound to a term set or to the root of a term set, then you can only call the terms properties, or you've got the get terms, which is the same. But the thing is that with none of them, so terms or get terms, you can't use the match information like that. And moreover, you will only have the direct terms. So if I, for instance, have 3 levels and I bind my taxonomy field to the first level, by default it will only give me the children of the first level. So the child terms of the first level, not of the second level, for instance. So that's what I do here. I'm loading the labels, I'm loading the custom properties. In this case, I can't call the match stuff, so I need to really retrieve all the terms, even those that are not marked with the auto-taggable properties, because SharePoint API doesn't allow me to do otherwise. I also tried with load query. It's just not manageable, so you need to load all the terms. But of course, since it's a subterm of a term set, let's say the possibility to load thousands of terms is rather limited. So unlike the whole term set ID, so advantage is that with the whole term set ID, I only load the terms that are marked with auto-taggable. Only those ones are retrieved. With the other methods, I can't use that way of working, but as you are already deeper in the hierarchy, the likelihood that you would have thousands of terms under that term is rather limited. But okay, it's still possible, but you should be aware of that limitation. So what I do here, I then unload the first level plus the terms of that first level. So if I have one term, it will go 2 levels deeper. But that's it. So if you have a third level, that will not be brought back by the system. Okay, so because otherwise I would need to make recursive calls to the SharePoint taxonomy to retrieve the subterms for each branch or each level, which I didn't. So I only take then 2 levels in that case for performance reasons, for ease of, it's mainly for performance reasons basically. So once either of those is loaded, then I execute the query and I really get the terms. When it's done, I add the terms. So to add the terms, I've got some again, there is a little bit of redundancy here, but I need to check if it's a root term, so bound to the root of the term set or not. And according to that, the way, let's say, of populating my term collection or my, let's say, labels, so I've got a list of labels which will be used to match basically the content of document, is a little bit different. So I will not really enter in all the details here, but basically, yeah, I need to distinguish whether I'm it's loaded via let's say term set ID or via a subterm. One last thing I need to show is maybe the matching terms method. This is really the method where I really compare terms from the taxonomies with the document content, and basically according to whether you've got the regex based tagging property or not, I will make the match differently. So if you have the regex based tagging, then it will just make a match of that regex against the text, and it will for each term that matches the let's say the contents with the regex, it will just add it to a terms of or to a list of found IDs. So if it's not a regex, then it's just matching either the synonyms. So I'm actually testing the properties you've configured, and according to that I make the match only on the synonyms, on the term itself, or on the regex. So that's how it works, and how I explained in my in the previous or in the configuration part of the video. Okay, so as a technical recap, we can say that then it's a cloud hosted app. So SharePoint part, of course, hosted in SharePoint. I mean, the app itself is deployed in SharePoint as in the app, and the remote part is in Azure, in the website in Azure. You can have it for free. So the only requirement is that you must have an Azure tenant, but you can also get one for free, providing you've got an MSDN account. So It makes use of the remote event receivers on item edit and field deleted. So item edit is whenever you use document. I don't handle item updated because, as I told in the previously, if say you modify the terms and you get rid of the terms I have added automatically, and I re-add them in the item updated event, I would have a problem. Okay, so that's why I don't handle that. So it's only tagging documents upon, let's say, upload of documents. So upload via drag and drop, any method, the method of your choice. So field deleted, just to keep the configuration in sync. So if one of the fields for which tagging was enabled gets deleted by an end user, I'm just syncing my configuration to make sure that I don't try to tag fields that do not exist anymore. So I just avoid also wasting time or unnecessary exceptions whenever item edit is called. Then it makes use of the app web. So as you know, in provider hosted apps, the app web is an optional component. So here I really use one to store some configuration, like indeed where tagging is enabled for which list and which fields. And basically it's faster than going back to the host web and checking all the time which fields are for which fields tagging is enabled. Okay, so that's a way. And anyway, then I should store the information elsewhere, so I prefer to keep it in the app web. I also make it in the app web to facilitate the deployment. If it's only for my own use or for my customer, I would rather store the configuration in the database, in the custom database in Azure, in SQL Azure, but I don't want to make it too complex. So if you want to try out this add-on and you're also forced to create a SQL Azure database, then you have more and more things to do before being able to test. So that's why I'm using the app web, let's say, component, because then it's transparent for you, you have nothing to do. Then it also handles the app uninstalling event to remove all remaining errors. So remote event receiver. So it means that if you didn't disable all the fields before uninstalling the app, then the uninstall event will remove the remote event receivers. That's quite an important step here, because remote event receivers that were created by apps cannot be deleted afterwards. They can only be deleted by the app itself. So that phase is quite crucial. Otherwise, you end up with orphan events. Even if these orphan events will not prevent you from using your document libraries, you won't even see it, but it's not very clean. So, and here I have a little trick to do. I need to get back to the host web, as I told you, because the app web is already deleted when my code is called. And but again, if you download the code and decide to use rather a database, then you could just reuse your database to handle the app installing event too. So it would be easier in this case. I need to go back to the host web, get all the event receivers and so on. So it's a little bit more work, but anyway, it's a one-shot operation because it's only when the app is removed. That's it. So feel free to contact me back. So follow me on Twitter, Stefan Neeskens, in one word, beginning of my slides, beginning of the video, and I'll be happy to help if I can. Thank you.